I lived in a typical suburban neighborhood, where houses lined neatly trimmed lawns and friendly waves greeted me every morning as I walked to my car. The Johnsons, my next-door neighbors, were a bustling family of 4. Theirs was a lively household with 2 young children, a pair of small dogs that yapped joyfully at every passerby, and parents whose heated arguments occasionally echoed through the thin walls. One evening, as I returned home from work, I heard raised voices coming from the Johnsons' backyard. Mr. Johnson and an older man, whom I assumed was his father, were engaged in a heated argument. I paused, feeling awkwardly intrusive yet unable to ignore the intensity of their confrontation. The argument escalated quickly, voices rising to a crescendo of anger before abruptly cutting off into an eerie silence. The following morning, the familiar sight of the Johnsons' white van, usually parked in their driveway, was conspicuously absent. I assumed they might have gone on a family trip, perhaps seeking to escape the tension that had gripped their home. Days turned into weeks, however, and the absence of any activity from their house became unsettling. No lights glowed in the evening, no children's laughter floated across the fence. It was a balmy evening when I first noticed a flicker of movement through the curtained windows of their house. Curiosity mingled with a growing sense of unease prompted me to investigate further. The front door, usually closed and welcoming, stood slightly ajar. With cautious steps, I approached, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the warm summer air. Inside, the house felt different, oppressive, suffused with an eerie silence that pressed down upon me like a weight. The air smelled stale, untouched by the usual sense of home-cooked meals or fresh laundry. As I ventured deeper into the hallway, the floorboards groaned underfoot, protesting the intrusion of my presence. A shadow darted across the living room, fleeting and indistinct as if trying to evade my gaze. Heart pounding, I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" Silence greeted my ears, broken only by the faint rustle of curtains in a breeze that seemed to have no source. The whispering started then, a soft rasping sound that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. I strained to make out the words, but they were unintelligible, a garbled mix of syllables that sent a shiver down my spine. Suddenly, a loud thump echoed from upstairs, followed by a child's giggle, high-pitched and utterly out of place in the desolate silence of the house. My nerves frayed. I turned on my heels and fled, instinctively locking the door behind me, as if to keep whatever unseen presence lurked within from following. That night, as I lay in bed, the events of the evening replayed in my mind like a macabre film reel. The memory of the shadow and the unsettling sounds refused to fade, haunting my thoughts and keeping sleep at bay. Just as I began to drift into a restless doze, 3 slow, deliberate knocks sounded on my front door. Heart in my throat, I stumbled out of bed, my footsteps hesitant as I approached the door. With trembling hands, I grasped the doorknob and swung it open, half expecting to confront some spectral figure or a child's ghostly visage. But the porch lay empty, bathed in the harsh glow of a street lamp, its light casting long, sinister shadows across the yard. In the weeks that followed, I watched as the Johnsons' house remained untouched and abandoned, a stark contrast to the lively home it once was. Neighbors murmured in hushed tones about the sudden disappearance of the family, speculating on what could have driven them away so abruptly. Some whispered of debts unpaid, others of dark secrets hidden behind closed doors. As time passed, the whispers in the night grew fainter, but never entirely disappeared. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I would hear those 3 knocks on my door again, followed by the distant echo of a child's laughter. Each time, I would peer into the darkness, half expecting to see the flicker of a curtain or the silhouette of a figure watching from afar. The Johnsons never returned, leaving their house a silent monument to unanswered questions and lingering dread. And though life in the neighborhood resumed its normalcy, with children playing and dogs barking in the sun-dappled streets, I couldn't shake the feeling that something, some presence, lingered in the shadows of that empty house, waiting patiently for the truth to be uncovered. It was a stifling summer night, the kind where the air hangs heavy and even the faintest sound seems amplified. I had just graduated from college, living in a small two-story unit in a low-income housing complex funded by the government. The units were lined up in rows like a motel, and I shared walls with neighbors on both sides. On this particular night, I had wrapped up my shift late and arrived home around 11 p.m. Exhausted, I hurried through the routine of making a quick meal and stepping into the shower. The warm water was a welcome relief, but my relaxation was short-lived. After only about 5 minutes, the peaceful sound of running water was interrupted by a loud, insistent banging, echoing from downstairs. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood frozen in the shower, the sound of my own breathing drowning out everything else. The banging continued, each thud like a sledgehammer against my nerves. With trembling hands, I turned off the water and wrapped a towel around myself. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it a neighbor? Someone at the wrong door? Carefully, I tiptoed down the stairs, the creaking wood beneath my feet adding to the eerie atmosphere. The front door loomed ahead, the source of the relentless pounding. As I approached, the dim light from the street lamp outside cast long shadows across the hallway. Just as I reached for the doorknob, the banging intensified once more, accompanied by an authoritative voice shouting something unintelligible from the other side. My pulse skyrocketed, fear turning my limbs to ice. Through the small glass pane in the door, a blinding beam of light pierced the darkness, followed by the unmistakable silhouette of a uniformed officer. "Police! Open the door slowly and put your hands up," the voice commanded. Terror gripped me as I complied with shaky hands, the cold metal of the doorknob chilling my palm. I opened the door slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. Outside stood 2 police officers, their expressions tense and weapons drawn. "Step outside slowly and keep your hands visible," one of them ordered, their voices muffled by the pounding of blood in my ears. With trembling steps, I obeyed, stepping out onto the porch under the harsh glare of the streetlight. The officers quickly secured me and guided me away from the doorway, their eyes scanning the surroundings with practiced vigilance. "We received reports of a suspect matching a murder suspect's description trying to enter units in this building," one of them explained, their words barely registering through the haze of fear. They swept through my small unit, checking closets and rooms with a thoroughness that felt suffocating. Every creak of the floorboards and rustle of fabric seemed magnified in the tense silence. After what felt like an eternity, they assured me the area was clear, offering apologies for the frightful intrusion. "Lock your doors and windows tonight, and call us immediately if you hear or see anything suspicious," they advised before disappearing into the night. Shaken, but grateful for their presence, I returned to my bed, trying to calm my racing thoughts. However, sleep eluded me. Hours passed in restless unease until the darkness outside began to fade, replaced by the tentative light of dawn filtering through my window. Just as the first rays of sunlight bathed the room in a soft glow, a faint noise stirred me from the brink of exhausted slumber. It was subtle at first, a quiet shuffle from across the hallway, the spare bedroom I rarely used. Panic surged anew as I remembered the night's events. Without hesitation, I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911, my voice barely steady as I relayed the situation to the dispatcher. As I spoke, the faint shuffle turned into frantic movements. The bedroom door burst open with a violent crash, the sound tearing through the silence like a thunderclap. Through bleary eyes, I caught a fleeting glimpse of a figure, a shadowy silhouette racing down the stairs and towards the back door with alarming speed. My heart pounded in my throat as I heard the door slam shut with a resounding thud, echoing through the empty house. By the time the police arrived, the intruder was long gone, leaving behind only a chilling reminder of their intrusion. A slashed screen on one of the back windows, a testament to their determined escape. In the days that followed, I lived in a state of heightened vigilance, haunted by the memory of that night. I installed extra locks on my doors, checked and rechecked the windows before bed, and never again took my safety for granted. The incident left an indelible mark on my psyche, a constant reminder that danger could lurk just beyond the familiar walls of home. In high school, I had a side gig house sitting for my wealthy aunt and uncle whenever they jetted off on their frequent vacations. Their sprawling estate nestled on the outskirts of town was a dream for a teenager used to cramped dorm rooms and busy classrooms. One Saturday night, I decided to host a low-key birthday bash for a close friend there, taking advantage of the expansive living space and privacy. The evening unfolded with laughter, music, and a few too many drinks. By 2 a.m., the last of my friends had departed, leaving behind a faint trail of discarded cups and plates. Determined to earn my keep, I set about cleaning up the aftermath of our impromptu celebration. The silence that settled over the house felt almost eerie after the lively gathering. As I finished tidying up, exhaustion weighed heavily on me. I decided to crash on the couch rather than trek up to one of the guest rooms. It wasn't long before weariness overtook me, and I drifted into a fitful sleep. Sometime later, I was jolted awake by the insistent chime of the doorbell echoing through the house. Groggy and disoriented, I stumbled to the front door, assuming it was a friend who had forgotten something in their rush to leave. But when I swung the door open, there was no one in sight. Just the stillness of the night and the faint glow of the porch light. I frowned, perplexed by the prank or mistake that had woken me. With a shrug, I closed the door and trudged back to the couch, hoping to salvage what was left of the night's sleep. But, as soon as I settled back into the cushions, the doorbell rang again, this time in quick succession, 4 or 5 times in rapid-fire succession. Annoyance flared within me, fueled by the interruption of my rest. I stormed back to the door, peering through the curtains into the darkness beyond. The street lay empty and quiet, devoid of any sign of mischief-makers or late-night revelers. Frustration mounting, I scanned the porch and front yard, half expecting to catch a glimpse of someone darting away in the shadows. But the night offered no clues, just an unsettling silence. Exasperated, I returned to the couch, my thoughts racing. Who would play such a bizarre prank, and why target this house, of all places? The unease settled in, casting a shadow over the remainder of the night. Morning dawned with a hesitant light filtering through the windows, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Stepping out onto the porch to retrieve the morning paper, I froze in my tracks. Taped to the front door was a note, hastily scrawled in jagged letters. "If you want a really fun night, leave the door unlocked next time." A chill raced down my spine as I read the ominous message. Fear and confusion warred within me. Who had been lurking outside in the darkness, watching and waiting? What did they mean by fun? The implications sent a shiver through me, and I knew I had to share this unsettling encounter with my aunt and uncle when they returned. Their arrival brought a sense of relief mingled with apprehension. I recounted the strange events of that night, the note clutched tightly in my hand as evidence of something deeply unsettling. Concern etched lines on their faces as they listened, their brows furrowing in worry. "We'll take care of this," my uncle assured me, his voice firm with resolve. True to their word, they wasted no time in installing a state-of-the-art Ring doorbell camera, a modern sentinel watching over the house day and night. Yet, despite the added security, a lingering unease settled over me whenever I found myself alone in the house after dark. Subsequent house-sitting duties became fraught with tension, each creak of the floorboards and every rustle of the wind outside heightening my senses. The reassurance of technology offered little comfort against the backdrop of that unsettling note and the mystery of who had left it. The sanctuary of my aunt and uncle's home had been tainted by a shadow I couldn't shake, a reminder that even in the most serene settings, darkness could lurk just beyond the threshold.